Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. In today's video, we are continuing our review for our unit test. This is going to be review number 2. I did make a typo here. So it is review number 2. We are going to be focusing on unit 7, content, distance formula, midpoint formula, prime factoring, all great things. Let's go ahead and get started. So the very first thing we have is find the distance between 7, -4 and 5, 6. Now you do notice if you're in my class, you would see a video. If you're not in my class, if you go to this link, you will watch a great video on how to find the distance between 2 points. So how do we do that? We're going to use the distance formula. And the distance formula is little d is equal to the square root of, now if you're in my class, you should know this song by heart already. It's fabulous. I'm not going to sing it, don't worry, but I am going to say the words to the song, which is the distance formula, and that is x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared, take the square root. It's a great song. If you memorize the song, you will memorize the distance formula. So you're going to need x2 minus x1 and then y2 minus y1. So let's label our points. Here's x1, y1, x2, y2. What I like to do is I like to rewrite the distance formula many times and kind of set things up for me simply to just plug in numbers. So I know the first number here is going to be my x2 number. Then I have my x1 number. Here I'm going to have my y2 number. And here I'm going to have my y1 number. Makes it a little bit easier in my opinion. So my x2 number is 5. My x1 number is 7. My y2 number is 6. And my y1 number is a -4. This is the reason I like to do the setup, because sometimes if you have a negative number like -4, you forget that there is another negative or another minus between those two numbers. Be careful. Once you are here, you're going to subtract these two numbers. So 5 minus 7 squared plus 6 minus a -4 squared. If you're in my class, I encourage you to use a calculator. If you're not in my class, please make sure that you are aware that two negatives make them positive. This one here is 5 take away 7. If I have 5 fingers, I can't take away 7 fingers. That means I'm going to borrow 2 fingers. So I have a -2 here. 6 plus 4 is 10. After that, we're going to square the numbers. Again, use a calculator. If you're using the calculator, please make sure to put parentheses around the -2. And I just realized that I just rewrote the same thing twice. Do you see that? Nothing changed. That's okay. I still have plenty of room. So -2 squared. So what I'm going to do on my calculator, hopefully you guys can see this. Let me angle it. So I have a negative, can you see that? There it goes, -2. So parenthesis, -2, parenthesis. And I have this button here that gives me a squared. So I'm going to press enter, and that gives me a +4. Plus 10 squared, I'm going to do the same thing. That gives me 100. So my answer is 104. Take the square root. Now, it all depends on your teacher. Some teachers want you to simplify this. Some teachers want it in decimal form. So if your teacher wants it in decimal form, on your calculator, you're going to see a little square root right here. If it's yellow like mine, that means you have to press the second button before you press this, or else it's not going to give you what you need. So I'm going to press that, and that gives me my little square root symbol. And so now I'm going to type in 104, press enter, and so that gives me an approximation of 10.198-ish as my answer. That's my distance. It's an approximated distance. It's not exact. This is exact. This is approximated. That's why I have squiggly equal signs. Let's go ahead and continue. Let's do one more. We're going to find the distance between 3, -4 and -12, -6. Same thing as before. We're going to start off by writing our formula. Again, sing the song if you need to recall the formula. x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. Take the square root. So then we're going to rewrite the formula one more time, but this time we're going to leave gaps. So x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. Label your points. Here's your x1, y1, x2, y2. Again, x2, x1, y2, y1. Plug in your numbers. So what do I have for x2? For x2, I have a negative 12. For x1, I have a positive 3. For y2, I have a minus 12. And for y1, I have a minus 4. Again, I see two negatives. If you're using a calculator, I'll show you how to do it using a calculator. But let's do this one here. And parenthesis minus 12, parenthesis minus 3. You can do parentheses here. Each number gets its own bubble. And that gives me a minus 15. Here again, each number, so think of it this way, each number gets its own bubble. So I have a minus 12 in a bubble, negative 12, minus, and again, inside a bubble, I get a minus 4 if you're using a calculator. Hopefully you guys can see that my calculator is a little low on battery, so it's a little bit more difficult to see, and that's going to give you a negative 8. Again, these are still in bubbles because we still need to square them. Once again, in a bubble, I'm going to do a negative 15. I'm going to press. You can do it two different ways. If you have a button like this on your calculator, the x squared, if I press this button, it will immediately give me a 2 up above. I'm going to press enter, and that gives me 225 plus. However, if you don't have that button, you can use a caret. And so what the caret is I'm going to put negative 8 in parentheses, is this button right here is the caret. And if I press that, that means the next number I type in, let me try to angle it so you guys can see it. The next number you type in will be your exponent. So my exponent is 2. Press enter, and that gives me a positive 64. So I have 225 plus, ooh, that's a minus. Let me do a plus, 64. And that gives me 289. Again, all of this is still take the square root because that's the last step. So this is our exact answer. And let's see what the square root is of 289. And that gives us a really pretty number, 17. So my exact distance is 17. And again, if you're stuck on how to do that, there is a video on distance formula on a great resource called YouTube. Let's continue. This time it's asking for midpoint, and again, if you're in my class working on this assignment, there is a video on how to do midpoint. Midpoint is a different formula. It's a capital M, so it's not slope. Slope is little m. We're talking about capital M. And you're going to do two things. You're going to take your y's, add them, divide by 2. Take your x's, add them, divide by 2. But x's always comes first. Remember how if you have a point, x, comma, y, your x's come first. So take your 2 x's, add them, divide by 2. Take your 2, that should be a y. Take your 2 y's, add them, divide by 2. So here's x1, y1, x2, y2. And just like before, what I like to do is I like to write everything out and just leave spaces for my x1, y1. So here's x1 plus x2, y1 plus y2. Now, if you mix up the order for midpoint, that's okay. For distance, it's a little tricky, okay? So don't mix up order and distance. But for midpoint, it's not going to be the end of the world. Excuse me. Okay, x1 is 4, x2 is 16, y1 is 8, y2 is negative 24. And again, using my calculator, no big deal. 4 plus 16, that is 20, comma, I still have my divided by 2, that doesn't change. And now I have 8 plus negative 24, that gives me a negative 16 divided by 2. Now I'm going to do 20 divided by 2. You can use a calculator for this if you need to, which is 10. And negative 16 divided by 2, which is a negative 8. So the midpoint is located at 10, comma, negative 8. All right, let's move on to the next one. Next one is still asking us for a midpoint, which is fine because we already know what to do. We're going to take our x's, we're going to add them, we're going to divide by 2. We're going to take our y's, add them, and divide by 2. We do need to label our points, so x1, y1, x2, y2. Again, I like to set it up to where all I need to do is input my numbers. So here's x1 plus x2, y1 plus y2. Inputting my numbers, my x1 is 7, my x2 is 14, and my y1 is 8, my y2 is 16. Using a calculator, I have 14 plus 7. 14 plus 7 is 21. I still have my divided by 2. 8 plus 16, that is 24 divided by 2. 21 divided by 2 is a decimal. And again, it depends on your teacher if she or he wants you to write this in a form of a fraction. If you want to leave it into a fraction, you would leave it as 21 halves. And then 24 divided by 2, that is 12. In my class, I'm okay if you use a calculator at the end to give me a decimal. And that's your point. Oh, you know what, you guys? I made a mistake at the end. This is not little d. It's not the distance, it's the midpoint. So we want a capital M. All right, let's move on. Which equation below has a graph that is parallel to the graph of the given equation? So parallel lines, parallel, same slope. So if you have y equals mx plus b, we're looking at the number in front of x. If the number in front of x is the same number, then it is parallel. So the number in front of x is a negative 1/6. So we're looking for negative 1/6. This is a positive 6. Is it the same? No. This is a positive 6. Is it the same? No. Both of the equations above are parallel. No, so it's none of these. Because you need the same number in front of x, if it's not the same number, it's not parallel. Which equation below has a graph that is perpendicular? So we're on question number 10. Oh, excuse me, question number 6. It is worth 10 points. Now, perpendicular is completely opposite. So we need the opposite and we need the reciprocal. Opposite means if it's a plus number, you need to make it into a minus. If it's a minus, you need to make it into a plus. Reciprocal means you take the fraction, if it is a fraction, and you flip it. Now, what happens if you don't have a fraction? If you have like, I don't know, like C. C is not a fraction. Well, you're going to put a 1 underneath that and then flip it over. So you need to flip the fraction and make it opposite on the symbol. So again, we're looking at the number in front of x. So this m value, the number in front of x. So here's the number in front of x. This number is negative 1/6. So for something that's perpendicular, we need to take the opposite and the reciprocal. So what's the opposite of a negative number? The opposite of a negative number is a positive. What's the flipped fraction? What's the reciprocal? Well, I'm going to flip this fraction, so that means I have 6 on top, 1 on the bottom. Now, if you have a 1 on the bottom, if you saw here, it's the same thing as saying just a number on top. So in this case, just 6. Sometimes they'll do 6 over 1, sometimes they'll just 6. So is this number opposite reciprocal of the one that's given to us? Yes. Is this number opposite reciprocal? So is this number 6? Yes. Both of these equations above. So in this case, because these two are your answers, this one's actually your real answer because both of the equations are reciprocals and opposite of your original slope, meaning they are perpendicular. So move on. Which equation below has a graph that is parallel? Again, parallel means same slope. That means this number in front has to be the same, can't change it, to the graph of the equation above. So now we have 6 in front of x. Does this have 6 in front of s? Yes. Does this have 6 in front of x? Yes. So that means both of these equations are parallel. Moving on to question number 8, the two numbers in the pair are opposite reciprocal. So are they opposite? Are they reciprocal? So opposite again means that you have to change the symbol. So if it's a plus, it goes into a minus. If it's a minus, it goes into a plus. Reciprocal means you flip the fraction. If you have a over b, to flip the fraction, you put b over a. If it is a whole number, you take the whole number, make it into a fraction, and then flip the fraction. So if we have negative 2, let's start with negative 2. The opposite of negative 2 is a positive. We have to make this into a fraction and flip it. So the opposite reciprocal would be a positive 1/2. So are these opposite reciprocals? Yes, that is very true. Moving on. Two numbers in the pair are opposite reciprocals, so we have to double check again. So they give us 1/4 and they give us 4. So let's take one of the numbers, find the opposite reciprocal, and check if it is 4. The first thing we want to do is take the opposite of a number. This is positive. The opposite of that is negative. Is this a negative number? No. So because it already is not a negative number, these are not opposite reciprocal. They are just reciprocals, but we need opposite. Two numbers in the pair are opposite reciprocals. Moving on to question number 10. Again, let's take the first number. We want opposite, which is negative. This is positive. And we want the reciprocal. This is a 5. So we need to make 5 into a fraction and flip it. We need to take the reciprocal. So that means I need negative 1/5. I have negative, but I do not have 1/5. That means this is not negative reciprocal. This is opposite, but it's not a reciprocal. So therefore, it is false. Moving on to question number 11. Question number 11, create a parallel, this should say a parallel line, to the given graph that goes through y-intercept at 0, -3. So 0, -3, let me actually zoom in here a little bit better. So we want another line that is parallel to the given line. So here's 0, -3, 1, 2. Oh, this is 2. So 3 is right here. So this is, you guys, this is 1. 2 jumps is -1. 2 jumps is -2. 2 jumps is -3. 2 jumps is -4. Do you see that? And we want to make it parallel. Remember, when it's parallel, parallel means same slope. So let's find the slope of the given line so that way we can use it. And this is a kind of like a cheater way of doing it. So I'm going to find a pretty point. Let's see here. I know this is a pretty point right here because it's on the intercept. And then let's see if we can find another pretty point. I think this is a pretty point right here. So that means I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 jumps up. 1, so 3 up, 1 to the right. My slope is positive, 3 up, 1 to the right. Because I want the same slope, I'm just going to do the same thing. 3 up, 1, 2, 3, 1 to the right. You can keep doing that if you want. 1, 2, 3, 1 to the right. I'm going to use a ruler if I have one in the next few seconds. I do not, so I'm going to use a paper. I'm going to fold this paper over. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up the points that you created, extend, and then you should see that these lines are parallel because they have the same slope. They will never touch, never intersect. Right, moving on to question number 12. Write the prime factorization of 120. So here is where you need to go to, maybe, I think if you're in my class, I will post this, but if you're not in my class, you would need the prime factor chart in order to know what your prime numbers are. Remember, prime numbers are numbers that have factors of 1 and a different, like 1 in itself. So if you, like for example, 3, 1 and 3 are the factors of 3. Two different numbers, but one of them is 1. So if we want to do prime factorization of 120, you start out with the factor tree. Give me two numbers that multiply to 120. I know 12 times 10 is 120. 12 is not prime, 10 is not prime. So we're going to continue factoring both. 12 is 4 times 3. 10 is 5 times 2. I know that 2 is prime. If you look at your prime factor chart or prime number chart, you know that 2 is prime, 2 is shaded, 5 is shaded, 3 is shaded, but 4 is not shaded, so that means we have to factor 4. So 2 times 2 is 4, 2 is prime, 2 is prime. So what are my prime factorizations of 120? So 120 is equal to, and you want smallest number to greatest. So these are my factors, my prime factors of 2. Excuse me, of 120. These are my prime factors of 120. Let's move on to question number 13. Now we want prime factorization of 40. Again, two numbers multiplied to get me 40. 4 and 10. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 2 is 10. looking at my prime factor chart, I have 2 being prime, I have 5 being prime. Therefore, my prime factors of 40 are 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. And let's move on to question number 14. We want prime factoring of 20. So we have 2 times 10. You can choose different numbers. I don't know why I like 10 right now. But 5 times 2 is 10. 2 is prime. So my prime factoring of 2, just kidding, I keep saying 2. My prime factoring of 20 is 2 times 2 times 5. And that is it. All right, beautiful people, thank you so much for watching this video. Good luck on your test, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.